Hello and welcome back to the Human AF podcast. I am your co-host, Steph Steph.
And I am your other co-host, Steph Taylor.
And we are so excited to just bring you guys another installment of our accidental mini series about boundaries.
Absolutely.
We did not plan for it to be three parts, but it is three parts, so whatever.
Yes,
Um,
this time we have two special guests to continue the conversation.
yeah, yeah. So we are so excited to have you ladies. Welcome Rosaura and Ashleigh.
Thank you. It's
Hey,
an
you
honor to be here.
guys.
Would you guys just give a little intro? Like, who are you? What do you guys have to do with boundaries? Like, why did we choose you guys?
Yeah, of course. I am a boundary coach. I help women find and set their boundaries in their everyday life so they can unclench literally every part of their body. And it's been amazing having to help women go from people pleasers to just in their power when they set even just small boundaries, starting at home with their kids, with themselves, and then watching it just grow. It's been amazing. So that's what I do. Ashleigh, what about a little bit about you?
I am a self-love coach for introverts. We know that introverts don't like to talk, let alone talk up for themselves. So that's kind of where I come into the mix. I teach women how to live authentically and unafraid.
I love that.
This is going to be such a good conversation.
Oh, I'm so
More of us,
excited.
introverts, people pleasers, codependents,
We're
It's
breaking
gonna
all
be
of
the
that down.
exactly, the knots, the one-stop shop.
I love it. So Rosara, you mentioned before we got on that you actually did a little sneak peek listen to our episode about boundaries. Or our two episodes about boundaries. Ashleigh, I'm not sure if you got a chance to listen, but
I did.
you did? Okay, so I'd love to know, how did we do?
Yeah, I thought it was amazing. I was like, yes, this is so good. And this is going to help so many people demystify, they're like, what the hell is a boundary? I don't get it. Right. And you guys were like, you guys had specific examples, especially with you
Yeah.
at the gym, right, Stephanie, where you were like, this
Mhm.
guy told me to put my phone away. And I just thought it was amazing. You guys did really well. You explained it super easy to understand. And I think people are going to want to re-listen to that a few times so they could really absorb what you said because it was perfect.
Oh, I love it. Thanks, Rosara.
Yeah.
And I second everything that she said.
Oh, I love it. So it was funny because when we first started the episode, like early on in the episode, I don't think I really fully understood what a boundary actually was. Like I sort of took it to mean something that somebody else sets or something that I set that is able to control how somebody else responds. And Steph had to educate me throughout the episode and teach me what a boundary actually is. So, do you guys get that a lot? Like where people are not quite clear on what boundaries are?
Yeah, 100%. Almost every few days, I get women in the DMs on Instagram and they're like, how can I tell someone X, Y, and Z so that they can do X, Y, and Z?
yeah.
Right. And I'm like, I mean, people are gonna do whatever the hell they want. You can't really control them. So there's that. But yeah, people believe that boundaries are to control others, right? So that they can get like the level of peace that they want, but it's like the opposite. You have to set the boundary so you can have that peace no matter what the hell they do,
Mhm.
right? So they could do
Mm.
whatever they want, and that internal boundary of yours is not going to be rocked or waved when they do that thing.
I
Right?
love that.
It's much more about you have to set the boundary with yourself. You have to turn it back around and go through that discomfort of I'm the one that has to make a change if they continue to take this action, not I'm going to stop them from taking this action by telling them I don't want you to do that action.
Yeah.
Like we have to go through
Exactly.
that uncomfortableness of changing our own behavior and not sitting in the anger that does feel good when you're angry at somebody else's actions and you're like constantly in that victim mode. It's so fascinating when you understand the internal work that has to happen.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say a lot of people just assume that you just can say it once and then it'll stick, even though we're creatures of habit. So you have to constantly set it, constantly remind it, constantly reinforce the boundary, like a 21-day habit type of thing. It's not just gonna stick the first time. And
Right.
as someone who's just starting to speak up for yourself or set those boundaries, it's very hard to like constantly, I guess, wade in that discomfort. So
Absolutely.
if you set one and someone oversteps it, some people just, okay, that's not working, I need to do something else. But no, you just need to keep hammering it in.
I
Yeah.
love that.
And I think one of the examples that Steph Taylor gave us was like the child at the table putting their feet on the table, right? And you have to keep telling them over and over, like, no. And then you remove them from the situation, like, let me help you, you know, and then they get it. Then they sit there and they eat their food with you and they're like, okay, cool. Right. But it has to be reinforced. It has to keep. And a lot of people stop, like Ashleigh said, they stop reinforcing it because they're like, well, it doesn't work. I feel like shit for even trying and nothing changed. There's no point. Let me just go back to people pleasing. Let me go back to doing what I've always done. And then until they hit that spiral again where they're like, something needs to change, they try it again. Right. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
There's the other part too of, especially when you're dealing with adults, if you continue to have the same boundaries pushed up against, because sometimes it's not like they cross the boundary, they will push the boundary. And there's also, you can get to that difficult part of, can this person actually stay in my life? Because clearly they are not getting that this is not okay. And that's a whole other level of discomfort and healing and changing your own behavior and holding your boundaries that has to happen. And I think that's a big thing for women too, is quite often we don't recognize when this is not okay and we need to leave the situation completely, as much as we have that empathetic, I want to be here, people pleasing, I want to help you. I can see so much potential, recognizing too that sometimes when people are continuing to push your boundaries, it's because they got something when you didn't have them.
100%.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I'm curious, like, what your thoughts are on like how women who are just finding their voice, or are just learning how to better communicate and or haven't even started that, like they're tired of the people pleasing. Where do you start with even figuring out what your boundaries are? Like, I think that was really hard for me. I didn't even know what my boundaries were, let alone how to communicate them. So, where do we begin?
Yeah, I think a great place to begin is kind of taking like an internal inventory. So let's say you're with your mom and you don't realize it yet, but she's somebody who pushes your boundaries a lot, right? Tries to cross them. And every time you're with her, you start feeling like this lump in your throat and you're like, every time I leave, I feel like I'm gonna cry. Like, why do I feel this, right? And then it's like, maybe I'm feeling this way because I'm with her. Okay, so what's happening when I'm with her? And it's kind of like going through your day. I would say like a movie scene. You're like, okay, this happened, and then this happened, and then I felt this way. So where was the disconnect? Was from what I was feeling and my actions, were they aligned? Because a lot of times people pleasers, they will say, like, yeah, mom, I'll go shopping with you. And the whole time they're like, oh, I had so much stuff to do. I had to go out with my friends. I didn't want to go here. Right. And their words and their actions, they're not aligning. It's like they say one thing, but they feel another. So I think taking inventory of that, like saying, oh, I notice I'm feeling this, but I'm doing this. There's a disconnect here. Once you start to kind of notice that in different situations with different people, you can say, it looks like this area of my life might need firm boundaries. And maybe this area of my life needs less boundaries, right? So it's just kind of looking in and saying, where is it that I'm not aligning my actions to my words? Where can I find that alignment in myself and going forward from there? So I think that's a great starting point.
I love
Wow.
that.
That actually brings up something I saw just this morning and sent to a
Of
friend.
course you did.
The
Steph's
universe.
thoughts are literally, no, it's crazy. Steph's thoughts, like as soon as she has a thought, like Instagram will just pop up with that exact thought. It's insane.
Funny. It's actually creepy. But I sent this to a friend, and it was, when you are continually asking why is somebody doing something, that's because the logical brain is coming in and trying to explain something, trying to explain somebody's behavior, because you're trying to control it. And all you get are 17,000 more questions of why. And then even though somebody explains like, well, they're doing it because of XYZ, you still go, yeah, but why? Why are they doing it to me? Why if I'm doing it like that? So the reframe is actually, I don't like, which completely matches what you're saying. Instead of going, why are they doing this? Why are they not behaving this way or whatever? Instead, it's, I don't like this. And then that then empowers you to then start the process of, where do I need boundaries? I am loving this.
Mind blown explode emoji.
Yeah, seriously. As I like to say, my brain goes into like a pretzel when I get like but I feel like this is really clarifying. Like it's all like making sense. So my brain is kind of unpretzeling right now. Like I'm like, wow, like this whole universe is just making sense. Like
Mhm.
and it's like I'm curious like what some of the people that you work with, what happens for them? Like what happens for them when they start to set those boundaries and when they start to, or not even set, like, but start to notice the things that you were talking about, Rosaura, like how things feel in their bodies and how things make them feel and how certain interactions feel. Like, how do you start to see them shift?
Yeah. So in the beginning, when women come to me, especially like in my coaching container, what I noticed was they come to me very angry, very resentful. They have a lot of these unprocessed emotions where they're like, I have been holding it in. I want to pop. Right. And they're like, but how do I pop without hurting everyone? Because I still want to make sure everyone is like, okay. Right. So they come in with all these emotions and it's like, okay, we got to work through one emotion at a time. We can't just untangle everything. Right. They come in with a pretzel of emotions. Yeah. And what we start with is learning how to just feel things in our body. And one of the foundational skills I start with is like feeling worthy, because that ties into a lot of like needing outside validation and needing to please others to feel that worth. Right. And I do this process. It's really fun. It's really easy. So they give me like a thought that they've been thinking. We do like some journaling and stuff like that. And let's say one of their thoughts is like, I need to make sure everyone is happy. And I'm like, okay, tell me the exact opposite of that. Right. And they're like, I don't have to make everyone happy. And I'm like, okay, let's go with that. And now give me examples of when you don't have to make people happy. And then they give me examples of that.
And
And
chills.
yeah. And once they do that, they like neurologically, their brain starts rewiring. They're like thinking of different possibilities. You know, when you get into like an anxious spiral and you think of everything that could possibly go wrong. So in this situation, Steph's like raising her hand. She's like, yes.
Every day.
Constantly.
In this situation, your mind is giving you possibilities of when the opposite is just as true. Right. And when your brain does this, your mind is like, oh my God, like we're firing neurons everywhere. Like, let's take a new path. And we're no longer spiraling to the anxious side. We're spiraling to different possibilities. So
Wow.
yeah, we do that over and over with all their thoughts and all their like people pleasing tendencies and habits. And then at the end of that process, they're just like, holy crap, we don't change who they are. We just change the spiral from spiraling, right?
The drain, instead of the spiral going down the drain, the spiral spirals up. Steph and I talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. And what about you, Ashley? What have you noticed just from watching the women and the people in your containers slowly start to notice their boundaries, even if they don't do anything with it yet, just noticing how they feel in their bodies. Like, how has that impacted them?
It impacts them in a lot of ways because they are people pleasers. They do want to make their family happy. A lot of them have siblings, older siblings that they look up to. So they have those expectations that are constantly put down on them, but they don't align like that. And that's how I feel personally, because my family has this whole, I'll say, Black excellence thing about them. You have to go to college, you have to get this career, you have to get married, have kids at this point in time. Anything later is unacceptable. And I just never aligned like that. So
Right.
you have to set these boundaries that enforces, I'm not going to live my life like that. And if you don't, I don't want to say agree with it, because they're not going to agree with it. They never really will. But you have
Right.
to be able to, I guess, accept it in a sort of way that doesn't cause any strain, doesn't cause any resentment, doesn't disillusion the family, I guess. And
Mm.
in my personal experience, I'll speak personally, I hated going around them. I distanced myself from my family so much because of this way that they would act, because they would keep trying to put me into this box. And I don't want to say it took me realizing that they're never going to change, which is kind of it. They're not going to change, but I was able to do the internal work like Rosaura was talking about earlier, and they don't have to change. I don't have to change either. It's just how I have to think about it. So the resentment isn't there, and I love spending time with them again. I can talk to them again, and it's just such a pleasure, I guess.
I love that.
I think one of the things you said, it kind of like activated something in my mind. It's kind of like you make a decision and you own that decision. No matter what your family or anyone else thinks of that decision, you have to be able to say, I'm okay if you don't like my decision, it's still mine, right? And then just kind of owning that, it'll start setting you up to have more boundaries in places where you need them.
Yeah, and ownership is hard.
Yeah.
That's a big one that I'm working on right now, and oh my God, it's so uncomfortable. The ownership. I am driving my friends and family absolutely bonkers because I'm like, I'm taking ownership, and they're like, shut the fuck up. I'm like, sorry, I am though. But it's like it's such a tough muscle to like stretch, just taking ownership for your boundaries, and like not just taking ownership for setting your boundaries, but also like communicating them, maintaining them, while at the same time respecting other people's boundaries. So I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on, as you set your own boundaries, also being cognizant of the fact that we're all on our own human journey. We all have our different boundaries. So while we're setting them, other people might have them too. And sometimes those are going to clash.
Yeah. I think me and Steph can speak to this. Steph Taylor, when was it that we reached out on Instagram? We were talking and we were doing like an accountability thing, right? And I was like, let's send each other our videos to be accountable. And she's like, girl, I muted your ass.
Oh my
Oh.
God.
Yeah, I had to, it was really funny. It was probably, gosh, that was last summer, maybe, I think.
It
Yeah,
was a while back, yeah.
we started something. We just wanted to hold each other accountable to like promoting what we were doing and talking about it and everything. And she went to me, she's like, okay, go watch my stuff, see what you think about it. Like, I posted it, would love your likes and feedback and whatnot. And I'm like, nope, sorry.
Yeah.
I a long time ago because the things you were saying were really triggering for me and I just could not handle it. Because she was spitting truth, and I was in a position in my life where I was going through a lot, and I was just in the very beginning of learning about boundaries, learning about setting boundaries, and having this a lot of trauma to overcome in order to be able to set that. So yeah, I had to sort of speak up and go, sorry, girl.
Wow.
The boundary that I cannot cross. But I love you.
Oh.
Yeah. And
But-
yeah, go ahead,
No,
Steph.
I was gonna ask, like, were you triggered by that? Like, how, what? No,
No.
wow.
When I read that, I was like, good for you. Like, good for you for knowing when you need to mute someone on social media, because social media is in our everyday lives now, right? And for you to say, whoa, this is triggering me and I'm not ready for that right now. Still love you, still gonna follow you, but let me just like block you for a little bit. Let me just mute you for a bit. I was like, that is awesome. It meant nothing about me. It had nothing to do with me, right?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
it had everything to do with her needing that, like, I'm not ready right now,
Mhm.
right? So it had nothing to do with me. I didn't take it personal. I was just like, yes, girl.
Yeah. And it was hard for me to also share that with you. I mean, there was definitely a split second there where I was, okay, do I unmute her so that we can work on this stuff and I'll just deal with my own, because it was my own stuff. I knew it was my own stuff, where it's like, I'm just not ready to have all of this bombarding me right now as I'm working through it with counselors and like on my own type of thing. I had to take, I took accountability for it and it was uncomfortable. Like, I own that boundary, but I'm glad you were also very receptive to it. And then we just worked out our own thing.
Yeah.
I need to know, how were you accountability buddies without you being able to read her content? Like, I have so many questions.
Well, you don't have to be able to read the content in order to be like, yes, you posted.
Right.
Yeah.
I
You
love
can just
that.
see it and then go you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were just like, I posted today. Awesome. I also posted. Sent an email. Awesome. Me too. Right. So it was more like, did we do the thing? Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we
Oh
just
my
shifted what it looked like. And then if she or I or whatever, wanted more feedback, then it's okay. I know that she could have come to me and said, hey, I'm actually looking for more feedback, which would have been pushing up against the boundary, which then
Mhm.
I'd have a decision of holding that boundary again. Or she could have just gone to somebody else and said, hey, I'm looking for feedback. Would you mind being accountability for me for feedback on these posts? Like, there's
Mhm.
different scenarios.
Wow. Oh my God. The plot thickens. Like, because I knew that, I knew that you had told me, like, you told me recently when we decided to bring Rosaura and Ashleigh on, that you had muted her. I did not know that you were accountability buddies. So I'm just like so amazed right now. That's so funny.
But it
And
also shows that you can still have a relationship and a good relationship with somebody who is also willing to respect your boundaries. Because you don't have to like them, but just basic human decency of respect, having conversations and, being able to still like the person, even if you don't agree with certain aspects of their life.
Mhm.
yeah, it's like that saying, you could love people from afar, right? Same thing on the internet, guys. Like,
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
thing.
Block, mute, whomever you want.
Yeah.
Right. Right, we can be friends in real life and just not friends on the internet if it
Yeah.
needs to be that way. I mean, I see so many people, especially with how divided our country is, especially with politics right now. But how many people I see talking about how they block every like this person and that person because of their opinions, and it's like good for you for holding the boundary, but is there a world where you can also be friends with them without having to see their content? I think we've kind of come up on in society up to like this like weird space where it's like if you have this opinion, we can no longer be friends, but it doesn't really have to be this way.
Yeah.
Being able to hold space and have conversations and change your boundaries too if you're like,
Mm.
okay, well, I needed that for a time, but
Mm.
I can change it now because the world's calmed down. That's never gonna happen.
The world, it ain't getting calmer.
Right. But that also, you have to also do the self-reflection and the inner work, and some people just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
It's easier to just, oh, I need to remove this person from my life than to do the inner work and see, am I wrong? Am I the problem? Nobody wants to do that.
Right. Right. And like kind of asking yourself, like, why am I actually triggered right now? Am I really triggered by this person? Do I really believe that this person is like so bad, or do I just disagree with their opinions? And is that cannot be okay?
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think the other caveat to add to that of is this is this something I'm being triggered by? Like, what do I have to change? But also recognizing that as people pleasers, codependents, we will often take responsibility for things that are not our responsibility. And we will often try to change things about ourselves that authentically we don't actually want to change. So always love to add that in there because that's something that I'm going through right now of taking on too much responsibility when it takes more than one person to cause a problem.
Yeah, 100%. And it's kind of like you have to look and say, what am I responsible for? And what am I not? What can I let go of that is totally not up to me? Right. And go from there.
You can only try so hard to help somebody.
100%.
Right. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, how like you can only try so hard to help somebody, but like you can only take responsibility for you, and how you feel and what you think and how you behave. And if people don't change because, you want them to, like, how can you like still be okay with them?
Ooh, I feel like that goes back to what we were talking about before, where it was, why are people doing this? I don't like how I feel about this. How do I want to feel? Because that how do I want to feel instead of how do I want it to be, because I want it to be that they're better and then I can have them in my life. But
Are you okay? Are you good?
no, I'm not. I'm thinking decisive and divisive, or divisive and divisive, whatever. So when you put it in how do I want to feel, that comes back to what brings me peace.
Yeah.
When you really narrow it down to that, because what brings me peace also brings you back, what do I actually control? Because there can be some muddied waters there. There really can. Not everything is so cut and dry. The easy stuff, yes, it's very cut and dry, especially if you're working with somebody that is aware and like does understand a little bit more. But sometimes some things can get muddled. So going back to how do I want to feel?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that so much. And, and remembering that feeling and tapping into it again, right? When you're like you're in the moment, you're like, everything is going to shit. And then you're like, what do I do? Because your mind is obviously going to spiral. So, like, remember that feeling and you tap into that and you're like, oh, yeah, I want to be, more present with my kids. I don't have to yell at them right now or whatever it is. And just kind of remembering, tap into that feeling.
Mm.
And this
Yeah. How important is it, do you think, like, I don't know where I was going with that. I'm sorry. I lost my train of
That's me
thought.
all the time. It's okay.
I don't know. I was gonna say something and I guess not. So I'm curious, like when your clients, like how long does it take, do you think, for your clients to start to notice the results of setting and communicating boundaries?
Um, it probably takes them a good 2-3 months, if I'm being 100%
Okay.
honest. Right? Because there's a lot of reinforcing in the beginning stages, especially with like other people. And a lot of times other people, when you've never spoken up and you've never like said like, hey, this is no longer okay, they're not taking you seriously. They're like, okay, she's saying that now, but tomorrow I can cross that boundary. Right.
Yeah.
So it takes a while to see like an actual shift in the outside world. What's going to happen first is that internal shift. And that happens probably on the same timeline, 2 to 3 months. But once you start noticing it on the outside, all of a sudden you're getting that like feedback and your mind is like, hey, this is actually working. Let's keep going. Let's keep doing this. Right. Because you want to keep feeling that like internal peace. And even though things happen, it's life, nothing's going to be peaceful forever. Right. But tuning back into that feeling like, okay, I'm safe right now. And even if I speak up, I'll still be safe. Right. Yeah.
I feel like we
Wow.
need to continue this conversation in a whole other episode. I have so many more questions, and yet we're getting to the end of our time.
Oh no.
We're gonna have to bring you guys on again, I think, because this conversation, there's so much more to it with finding your worth, speaking your voice, being authentic, and how you do that as you are continuing to grow and change yourself, where there's relationships and people that might not be able to follow you as closely as they once had. So how you sort of balance that with your boundaries, as you find your footing through all of it. So I don't know about you, Steph, but I think we need to have these ladies on for another episode.
Oh,
The line.
absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm very down.
Okay, in the meantime, why don't both of you ladies share how our listeners can get in touch with you and work with you, or just follow you, not mute you like I have, but but connect with you. Let us know. Let them know. One of you speak up.
Yeah, so me and Ashley are actually starting a podcast together. It's launching May 8th.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm so excited. It's called Boundary, Self-Love, and Other Shit. And it's just a combo
I
of
love
like,
it.
yeah, it's a combo of the boundaries, the self-love coaching, and just other shit, right? So it's gonna be a
Okay.
lot of fun. We've been working on the back end to just like bring this thing to life. And if you could follow us on our social media, I believe the @ is also boundaries.selflove. Ooh, something like that, you guys. It is a
I don't
long
know
one.
either. It's long as fuck.
It'll be in the show notes. It's
It'll
fine.
be in the
Yeah.
show notes.
Perfect.
I love that. And I'm just curious. So one thing that we've been starting to do is come up with like a list of resources and books and what have like podcasts. So obviously your podcast will be at the top of our list when it comes to boundaries. But do you have any books or podcasts or like any other resources that you would recommend to our listeners for like just getting started, other than of course your following on Instagram and listening to your podcast?
Yeah, there's a book. It's called The Mountain Is You. I believe the author is Brianna Wiest. Oh man, when I read that, I was in literal tears because it felt like she was reflecting back to me who I was in that moment and who I could potentially be, right? Someone who speaks up, someone who overcomes things, someone who strives and moves forward. And it was so like, it was one of those books I read like on a whim. Someone recommended it to me, and I was like, sure, I'll read it. And it was like, wow, that was beautiful. So definitely recommend that.
Okay.
Yeah. And this one is kind of like a catch-all. It's Atomic Habits by, I believe, James Clear.
Clear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
James
Jane
Clear.
Clear.
Yeah. Man, that thing is so good. You know, especially when you like want to set a habit of setting boundaries, you could use that to like help you do that. So that's really good.
Wow. You know what? That book keeps coming up, so I feel like it's a sign that it's time to read it.
Have you
Mm.
not read it?
I
No,
haven't
I
read it
haven't.
either.
Guys, audiobook it.
Oh yeah, you gotta read it. You gotta read it, sign up for his
Mhm.
email list.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do the whole thing. Yeah.
I'm
It's-
in. I'm in. I have 80 pages left in my current book, and then I'm actually going to grab a copy, I think, this weekend.
The Body Keeps Score, you have 80 pages left?
Mm-hmm.
I'm only at 80 pages. But
Well, I
okay,
read 10 pages a day, so.
it's true. Okay, well, thank you ladies so much for sharing those resources, and we will make sure that everything is tagged in the show notes. Again, thank you both for coming on here. It has been an absolute delight to have this conversation with you guys, and we will definitely be continuing it.
Yeah.
Everybody, make sure that you are following to get their podcast, which is super exciting.
We're so excited to listen.
Oh,
Yes.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for giving us the space to be here and share this. It's such an important topic. And the fact that you guys have 3 episodes already about this, there might be a 4th. I'm excited.
We can't stop. Boundaries are the most important. I think they're probably one of the most important things to becoming human AF. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, ladies. This was so much fun. Thanks for being our first guest.
No problem.
It's awesome. Okay, if you guys loved the episode, recommend it, rate it, comment, share it, do all the things. Make sure you're following us. We love you guys. And thank you again. And we will see you again next week.
Yes, we will. Bye.